Hello, and an incredibly warm welcome to everybody who's here on this virtual forum today. We are delighted to have you all here. Thanks for taking the time to join us the next couple of hours. Good evening, everyone from these regions, and good day to the international audience. We are absolutely delighted that you have come to join us for International Women's Day edition of ISUC Plaza Series 6, the panel discussion organized by Integrated Sustainability and Urban Creativity Center, ISUC, from Asia Pacific University of Technology and Innovation, APU, Malaysia. I'm your host, as well as the moderator of today's panel discussion, Stephen Poon, and I'm thrilled to discuss today's forum. Make sure you don't miss the chance to be part of the discussion. Now, before I introduce our amazing panel to discuss about resource efficiency for sustainability challenges, creativity and innovation central to circular economy. Simultaneously, the audience out there can also use the Q&A function in the social media links to submit your question to our speakers. We have a very diverse panel with different experiences, with also a very diverse expertise, and I'm sure, like me, all of you are looking forward to the views from all of them. Now we have three panelists, excluding me, and I want to make sure we get to hear from each of them. A quick background of today's discussion. We are investigating how instrument processes and structure in the area of creativity and innovation can support the transition from a linear economy to a circular economy. With a particular focus on the role of inter-organizational collaboration In the last decades, economic growth has been pushed and sustained by technological innovations. However, these technological innovations often neglected the constraint imposed by our planet, for instance, its finite resources and the impact of human activities on the environment, for instance, emission of greenhouse gases. According to the IEA, International Energy Agency, in 2021, CO2 emission reached the highest ever average annual concentration in the atmosphere in 2020. We have the statistic here, which is 421.5 parts per million, 50% higher than at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Currently, the technological and organizational trends are heading towards novel approaches that consider the constraint imposed by our planet and reduce the impact of human activities on the environment. A much discussed one is circular economy. The circular economy approach aims to reduce resource use, prevent waste, and optimize the environmental, social, and economic value of products, components, materials through initiatives such as reuse, repair, refurbishment, and ultimately recycling. Before we kick off the session, I would like to bring everybody through the first panel topic. With a growing population which isn't subsiding, an over-resource dependent economy, we are really at crisis point to look into how we can transition our consumption based on restoring balance in how we build, live, and consume. Restoring balance, and this means looking at creating energy, increase use sustainable energy, decreasing water consumption and saving water, contribute to biodiversity, restore or increasing biodiversity, consuming less none, improve our environments, building holistically. Nothing sits in isolation. I would like to introduce our first panelist today. She is principal at Hijaz Architects and Planners and also deputy director of Plaza Architects. She is responsible for developing sustainable
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Dr. Stephen. I think we've sort of lost him a little bit, but that's okay. I think I can continue if that's all right. My name is Serena Hijaz, and I'm from Hijaz Architects. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I think it's actually quite a new platform for me to be here. I'm not familiar with the donut economy and all the rest of it. I think I've just been familiar with what I've been doing. So maybe I will ask JT, could you put up my slides and we'll start to my introduction. This is slide 11, so we need to go back to slide 1. Okay, I will control it from here, I guess. Right, thank you very much. And actually, when I was given this topic, resource efficiency for sustainable challenges, I guess that is in the environment that I'm working in. Building buildings, we are very acutely aware on the amount of resources we are using and the amount of footprint that we are expanding to. And so my topic today is restoring balance and moving towards regeneration. This is a picture in my background. I'm not quite sure. The slide seems to appear there. Maybe it goes up. Yeah. This is a picture of highways very close to where I live. No guessing where this location is. I didn't think that I would see the day that we would actually escalate to this kind of level. In a world where our resources are depleting and our population is ever expanding, we keep doing the same things over and under, weaving our cities with highways and automobiles. And personally, I'm not a fan of this because I see this as not being resource efficient in many ways. And so I see where we are now today is that we're really in the midst of restoring and regeneration, which is very central to circular economy. This is a picture of the High Line. Some of you may be very familiar in New York City. And certainly there are other cities that are transforming their highways into linear parks connecting one place to the other. So there is a sort of taking over of these highways that were, or railway. In this case, it was a railway line and it was taken over to become a linear park, which then contributes back to the city. We are expanding and very expensive in our resource for expediency. For the sense of expediency, we've reached a point that we should question how we create and how we innovate. Do we do it by building taller buildings, larger, longer, bigger? These are not always the best answer. Most of us know that we're in this sort of climate change and critical situation, but not many know that we are here at 1.2 degrees already in terms of temperature in 2021. And though we had the pandemic, we didn't really reduce in terms of our temperature global warming. And that's because the effects of today are really to do about what we had done 10 to 15 years ago. Carbon is not something that is emitted immediately and you can see that we're expanding. These are effects of global warming that's happened over 15 to 20 years. So whilst we had the pandemic and everybody sort of worked from home, we noticed that the carbon didn't really change. It changed minutely. And that's because the carbon in our atmosphere is from things that we have done in the past and not what we've done now. So what does this mean? This means we need to accelerate what we're doing. In Penang itself, down in Bayan Lepas, we have measured 1.5 mean temperature change in Penang since 1950 to 2018. And you can see this is a heat mapping of cities that is sort of happening now. You can see quite clearly where it's green, where it's blue, and what is causing the heat, what we call the heat vulnerability and the heat expanding out is really from our urbanization of our cities. I've been tracking quite a bit in terms of the CO2. I think most of my talks actually start off with, we were here at this stage and now we've actually changed. The generation that I am in is now really working very hard in terms of looking at the ecological and the environment and looking for solutions in the circularity in terms of nature-based solutions and biodiversity, lowering our embodied energy and being carbon neutral in trying to address climate change. So, but what are the real new drivers in this time now? Since we're trying to project and reduce as much as we can, I think our generation or your generation really needs to expedite, repair, recycle, restore, and regenerative. What do you mean by restore? Right at the moment now, we're just trying to restore and keep balance. We're trying to not go up by 1.2, but fighting very badly to go down. So I call that restoring and just being neutral. We had this idea in the economies of take, make, and dispose economy. That means I build it, it's supposed to last for 100 years. I buy this, I can just throw it away. And that has had a devastating impact on people and the environment. So in order for us to restore balance, to be a more, I call it regenerative economy, which is really where we should be striving for now, we need to consume less, create our own energy, capture and save our own water, create biomimetic materials, restore biodiversity, and create life cycle food for ourselves. But I have some hope. And my hope is in this, and what I'm starting to see emerging in this sort of creativity and innovation sector. We're looking now to create from recycled materials as a necessity. We're starting to see recycled plastics as tiles. We're starting to see waste clay as humidifiers. We're starting to see bio-based bottles. We're trying to address this by first, in the circularity, recycling the materials out of necessity. But the real exploration of creativity and innovation comes from exploring biomimetic and living materials as a solution for our future. What do I mean by that? That means if we can learn from nature, we can actually grow what we need, grow everything from our concrete to timber for construction, to the clothes that we're wearing, from mushrooms, from all the rest of it. If we can grow and these are biodegradable, then we are really providing the solutions for our future. And this is where the creativity and innovation comes. It is not a linear line. It is really ever expanding and looking at what are the best solutions, but the drivers are two. What can we recycle and what can we use from nature to actually create what we need now that is basically biodegradable? So I think that's going to be the big shift. When we look at circular economy and innovation, this is from the World Economic Forum, they look at basically interconnections of other elements to consider. It's really quite an interesting thing, but I think in terms of the process of design, what it means is you start to think of holistic things that are really going to impact you. And so when you click onto technology and innovation, it basically connects you to other elements that you have to consider when you're looking at this. And I think this is a way of how our creative and innovation can actually strive and provide a positive impact instead of a neutral or negative impact that we're actually having now. So I wanted to give you an example of what I meant. This is a project that we did in Dubai. And this was the first time that we thought about a total life cycle. Because usually when you build something, or I buy a car, it's going to last for 5 years. I buy clothing, of course, clothing not, I can go to Zara and all the rest of it, and I can continue to buy every month something. But the real thing here is in this instance for this project that we did, and I think I'm just using it as an example of not just ideas, but how do we implement something like this? We're given this site. This is in Dubai. It's basically just sand. And we were told that when we finish the building, we are to return it to ground zero in 2022. So for the first time, you have to think, how can I build sustainably, take it all down, and put back the earth the way it was exactly before? And how would I be able to run a building that would basically have a net zero energy and net zero carbon? And so Malaysian Pavilion at Dubai became the first pavilion, the smallest pavilion, one of the smallest pavilion, but the first project and pavilion in all the carbon building. And that's because of creating and innovating, we have to think about the entire life cycle. We have to know at the end of the day, we leave things as we expand and build, we can actually go back to ground zero. And so that's a different type of thinking, life cycle, whether it's produce of other garments or things like that. We are thinking always about the circularity. The idea is not kind of new in a sense. We have a tradition of that in Malaysia in terms of moving buildings and taking them down. We have a 100-year-old house that we actually took down and reassembled again in a different location. But just to give you an example, one building like this for 6 months on just a very small building, 1,790 meters square, is equivalent to the carbon emitted by 73 hectares in a year. So that means if I was in a shopping center, can you imagine how much energy is taken and how much carbon is released in that response? And that's why we mean that we need to get to a carbon neutrality, but we also need to get to a regenerative thinking. Knowing that this building is transient, although now we have a one of the few expo pavilions that's been maintained for another 5 years. We started to think, what's the impact of this pavilion, and what's the impact when we take it down? It's a very lightweight structure. It also has a function, as I said, it had 1.2 million people in 6 months, which is a lot of people going through the building. This is, when we thought about the construction, we also thought about how we would take down the building, and that 75% of the building materials can be recycled, upcycled, or reused. And that's a totally different thinking in terms. So restoring balance and moving towards regeneration, we haven't started to do that, but I think that the next move for us is regenerative thinking. And that is when we start to think about our buildings or whatever we're doing, we're starting to think that there is a regenerative element to that. And that would be the drive for the creative and innovation that we're going. I'm just giving you some of the sort of other elements and special things about the building in terms of how energy efficient it was, you know, how less water was used for the building. But this building is sustainable timber from the facade to the floor plates to the roof, except for the concrete basement. We couldn't come away from that. It's a very lightweight structure, so the idea is that we can disassemble this building, and then we can actually repurpose all the materials and upcycle the materials. These were some of the sustainable components of the building. And we measured the amount of materials. We measured how much we're actually using, the tonnage, and towards net zero, how much we had to do to basically bring it down. And these are some of the other attributes. It's a net zero carbon and a net zero energy. So we hear a lot of this talk, you know, 2030 is the target where all of us should be actually targeting a net zero. I don't think in 7 years' time we will arrive to a net zero. We aspire to it, but we really have to cut down by about 50% of whatever we do. We have to rethink about how we consume. Restoring balance and moving forward. This word regeneration, I think it's a very important word. In science, what regenerative means is that the cells can actually regenerate itself. You can actually, like in biomimicry and animals, where some animals like lizards, if they lose a part, they actually can grow back that part. So in science, regenerative means this. In regenerative economy, it basically means that we move into a positive cycle in which everything we do, we're trying to have a positive impact, not a negative impact, in terms of restoring ecosystems, taking carbon out of the atmosphere, regarding communities, and so on. Thank you. Dr. Stephen, are you back there?
Okay, hi there. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Serena. There was a little technicality early on. For the strange reason, internet connection is not that good today. Okay, yes, I followed through. Yes. Right, let's thank you, Serena. And an economy that is restorative and regenerative by design, according to Serena's statement. In a circular economy, economic activity builds and rebuilds overall system health. And the concept recognizes the importance of the economy needing to work effectively at all scales. But for big and small businesses, for organizations and individuals globally and locally, it is based on the three principles according to Serena. Eliminate waste pollution. What if waste and pollution were never created in the first place? circulate products and materials. What if we could build an economy that uses things rather than uses them out? Regenerate nature. What if we could not only protect but actively improve the environment? Pause for thought. Thank you, architect Dr. Serena Hijaz. Coming up, our second panelist focus on creative professional have the power to shape the world around us. With borderless creativity, they can collaborate with others from around the world to bring fresh perspectives and new ideas to their work, enhancing their personal and professional growth. In an inclusive circular economy today, everyone has equal opportunities and access to resources, allowing creative professionals to thrive and contribute to society while generating economic benefits for their communities and countries. By leveraging the full potential of creative professional through borderless creativity and an inclusive circular economy, we can drive economic growth, create new industries, and expand the possibilities of our economic landscape. The background of the second panelist as the co-founder and CEO of Cow Creative, a career discovery and networking platform for Southeast Asia creative workforce. She championed creatives with over a decade of experience in the creative industry. She launched Teach events in 2016, where she worked with the global clients such as Walt Disney Studios, Nestle, Procter and Gamble, and Cartier. She noticed the lack of diversity of creative industry and realized there was no platform for creative professionals to feel valued. In 2020, she started building the first version of the Cow Creative web app without any coding or design knowledge. To date, Cow Creative currently boasts a community of 7,000 creative professionals specializing in graphic design, social media, copywriting, photography, and videography. The platform has over 700 employer brands with a regional presence in Malaysia, Singapore, and Australia. Cow Creative has at a 65% success match rate and match 260 creative professionals with potential employers. Cow Creative leverages technology for talent acquisitions, engagement, and retention, and is the first all-women creative-led tech company with regional growth, fund success in Southeast Asia, working towards in the integration of the region creative communities for the regional development. Here we are. Please welcome Miss Charmaine Wong.
Stephen, for that wonderful introduction. Hi guys, I'm Charmaine. I'm dialing in from Jakarta because we're launching a new market here. So selamat sore and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for having me, Dr. Stephen. I feel super honored and privileged to be in a league with Serena and Rachel, who are like super like academic smarty pants, and here I am, just trying to do my best for the creative industry. So let's go. I can present my slides. So how do we do this? Yeah, let's go, guys. Hi, hello from Cow Creative. We are a career discovery and networking platform for Southeast Asia's creative workforce. This is me. Humble me. I am the co-founder and CEO of Cow Creative. Previously, I was the founder and managing director of Tish Events. We used to do things from events set up for Nestle, Walt Disney, Adidas, Longchamp, and whatnot. But pandemic happened. Unfortunately, had to close the company down. That's why we started Cult Creative, because we saw a need that creative professionals were not feeling seen and valued, and also getting hired by the right employers. Before becoming an entrepreneur, I had worked for Harper's Bazaar, a magazine, as their sales manager, and I was also in PR. I graduated in public relations in RMIT, and it's been a very interesting career journey, going from PR, comms, to sales, to being an entrepreneur. So everything has kind of led me here, and I've got 10 years of experience hiring, managing, and leading creative teams. So let me share with you what we do at Cult Creative. So like I mentioned, what we do is we're pretty much a LinkedIn for the creative world. So employers post up jobs to look for creatives, and creatives use their portfolio and profiles in one place, which makes it easy for them to find. We basically use data matching, machine learning, and also matching, right, algorithm. And our goal is to bridge Southeast Asia's creative workforce by enabling borderless employability and also opportunities. So going back to this topic, I remember feeling very overwhelmed because I was not a very good student. So I had to really kind of study for this. But when I dug deep and I learned more about it, looking at some of the key principles I put up here, circular economy key principles are designing out wastage, being sustainable, reusing materials or reusing existing templates, empowering locals, and putting in innovation. This is everything we do at Cult Creative. We are constantly thinking about how to optimize better, streamline, using templated collaterals, no wastage. So it's pretty much easy to say that we do this on a daily basis, and also that creativity is also problem solving, and this is really important to sort of bring forward the circular economy, right? Sorry, I have a bit of cough. So why is creativity and innovation so essential? This is essential for the success of the circular economy because they enable the development of new business models, products, and services that promote sustainable practices. For example, using innovative materials. And I'm sure Serena, I don't know, I'm sure you watched this on Netflix. It's a design documentary called The Art of Abstract. It features Nexie Oxman. She is such a superwoman. She is a bioarchitect who works in the intersection of biology and architecture, and she's leading MIT Media Lab. So she's pretty much everything that you said just now about regenerative materials. That's exactly what she's doing there. And Olafur Ellison, I'm obsessed about all these design folks, right? So he is an artist and architect as well, and his work is often inspired by nature. He's Danish, so he's always featuring waterfalls and landscapes and using the play of light for his work. So other than that, of course, the implementation of creativity and innovation is more efficient and can often maximize resource use. Like I mentioned just now, creative thinking and problem-solving skills can help identify new opportunities for waste reduction. And of course, we want to unlock new solutions to promote sustainable practices. All right, so this is something I know best because we study a lot of this, and we thought we need to show this to our investors, right? To show how important creative professionals are. So, from my data, Malaysia itself, we spent over $2 billion on marketing and ad spend. And I'm sure you guys know who are the biggest spenders. It's the Ministry of Comms and the Ministry of Health. After that is Shopee. But who supports this multi-billion-dollar industry, right? Creative professionals. Yet, we are facing the worst talent crisis ever because number one, lack of quality talent. Number two, lack of network and expertise to select the right candidates, and inefficient high cost to hire through traditional means, meaning headhunting service. And finally, lack of systematic recruitment and talent screening process. Why does this relate to circular economy, you ask, right? So what we learned that, with our tech, we can actually improve that by showcasing that machine learning and data analytics can actually show more results in innovation and creative solutions that contribute to the circular economy, meaning with better processes, we can match better creatives to jobs, content, and experience, right? So this improves efficiency and effectiveness in the talent pool. Number two, data-driven insights can help companies and policymakers make more informed decisions to help improve circular economy practices as well. Number three, streamlined recruitment process can actually help attract more diverse and skilled talent to the creative economy and ultimately contributing to the success of circular economy initiatives. So, of course, I have to plug about Cult Creative and our work, right? So, first thing that we do at the Cult is the profile section. And why this is important is because we want to showcase that talents now are actually using their portfolio to showcase great work. And not only great work, but a lot of them have strong thought processes. And you'd be surprised, a lot of them are very inspired by nature and sustainability. We've got one creative that uses bamboo weaving inspired to work on her projects. So yeah, using our profile, we enable creatives to share their work and also contribute their expertise and skills. Number two, we are also a hub that connects employers and job seeker, and with this, it showcase more creatives to drive more work for the creative economy. And number three, our platform empowers creatives to continuously develop their skills, and this is important because we definitely want them to level up. They need to be updated with this fast-paced, high fast track sort of landscape, right? And of course, this will also contribute and learn more. And at the end of the day, we want to foster a community that is highly engaged, highly skilled, that can also contribute to sustainability efforts and circular efforts. So, why is this important? Because I talk a lot about borderless creativity because we're here right now in Jakarta and realize that, you know, talent shortage is a real thing, and with tech and creative problem solving, we can actually break that down. Of course, we can have free flow of ideas, collaboration, co-creation, and creativity, right, to sort of bridge that gap. Number two, connecting creatives with employers. This promotes diversity and also inclusion, and also the development of more innovative and sustainable solutions, right? What create power of creative people, right? And breaking down geographical barriers, we also promote the sharing of best practices and knowledge across borders, helping accelerate the adoption of circular economy practice and principles. All right, I want to show you guys this, and this is a real life example of what we're doing that is breaking down barriers geographically and using tech as well, working with different creative professionals. We are working with Mito World, our partner, to create a metaverse exhibition for our three-part Mirip series. So we just launched Indonesia. It's been an exciting journey, learning about a new market, bridging our solutions to their problems and seeing how we can use our current product features to help more creative professionals find work in a regional base, right? So Mirip actually encourages to discuss more cross-border collaboration, and for this, really excited to feature panelists who are women creative leaders from Bangkok, Singapore, and Malaysia. And these are like award-winning creatives, and they are here to share these cross-border experience and creative learnings. And we're also going to be featuring a lot of creatives from Indonesia and Malaysia as well. So if you guys are free at home on next Saturday, it's on the Metaverse. You can join us. The link is right there. And my key takeaways is circular economy aims to promote efficiency within society regardless of national boundaries. We say here society because we believe that it should not only be confined to nation state boundaries. ASEAN should be where the border stops. Number two, in a borderless world, efficiency of resources deployed, for example, national resources, human capital, and finances, will be crucial to promote sustainability and to alleviate individual and industry standards. The creative industry is arguably the more organic compared to other more traditional industries. Hence, a platform like us would be ideal for individuals and companies to network, understand pain points, and identify collaborative efforts to promote improvements within the compounds of the circular economy, whatever the boundary one chooses to set. And finally, this will enable industry players, for our freelancers, to understand the value and supply chain better, and be able to not only address industry issues, but these will also encourage innovation and collaboration efforts, will stand a better chance lobbying much needed funding, which creative people, we don't get that a lot, from government, financial institutions that are currently supportive of sustainable efforts. And that's me. Thank you so much, guys. So Cult Creative is on the App Store and Play Store. Please check us out. The QR code is right there. And join us on our mission to empower more creative professionals to get better opportunities in the borderless world. And yeah, let's work towards circular economy. Thank you very much.
Right. New era of creativity is improving the quality of ideas we are experiences and has been best demonstrated through an agile collaborative growth mindset according to Shemaine. Borderless creativity is poised to propel the next phase of creative big ideas that will have a sustainable impact on societies and communities. However, it will be important to harness in spirit, build a collaborative growth mindset culture. Nurturing and encouraging can be accelerated and influenced further by marketers becoming more courageous and risk ready and encouraging of bolder and bigger ideas. Agency and clients evolving the way outcomes are valued and accounted for within the business. It has been a fearless and has outshone everything else we do in marketing and advertising. Importantly, creativity is yet again making brands and businesses matter. It is driving a positive bounce back, empowering creative circular entrepreneurs, aims to upskills creatives and is aspiring creatives to embrace circular economic principle as a key tool to adapt their business to a more sustainable model that reduces cost and waste while protecting and creating jobs. Thank you, Ms. Shermay Wong. In furtherance of the topic, let's look at the emergence of experimental governance, smart cities, civic labs, and placemaking scheme as example of a paradigmatic shift of a new entrepreneurial urbanism in train since the global financial crisis. But given further impetus during COVID-19, argue that such approaches, underpinned by the predominantly creative leadership and skill sets, offer new approaches for urban areas to tackle complex challenges of our time, but notes the paradoxes of their serial reproduction, prototypical experiments, and the rapid number of the fellows outside of the public ownership. Yes, last but not least, our third panelist, Professor of Urban Economics in the Leicester Castle Business School at De Montfort University from UK. Her research and teaching interests are directed towards normative and practice-based issues of creative city in advanced society, smart and experimental governance, and inclusive design-led growth. A major set of the research themes is concerned with cultural economy of the city. With recent work examining hidden cultures and relational processes, the influence of networks and clusters, and the shaping of the evolving creative sectors, she is currently conducting research on the 6 models of the creative industry, creative life cycles, and the design as a major growth pole. A second principal area of work concerns processes and implication of transformative change in creative cities, underpinned by design leadership, collaborative innovation, and experimental governance. She is site director for AHRC, which is Arts and Humanities Research Council, Midlands 4 Cities Program, and co-lead on the Leicester Civic University Agreement for Economy and Business. Her recent publication includes books on values construction in the creative economy and design culture and the city, as well as papers on the creative splintering and the evolution of culture as a civic innovation. She also leads on the Leicester Urban Innovation Lab with publication on sharing cities, urban generation, and urban transition. She works closely with several stakeholders group to support regrowth of urban economies, building Leicester City Council, the Leicester and Leicestershire Enterprise Partnership, the East Midland Chambers UK, and Service Sector Based Association. Please welcome to our last speaker of today, Professor Rachel Granger.
Hi, many thanks, Dr. Stephen, and thanks for welcoming me today. So look, my presentation today recognises and analyses the creative processes and outcomes that are that are formed from multi-sector stakeholders and co-creative practices in cities, and the new civic models and infrastructure that has grown around that. That's a term that I call civic innovation, and I'm particularly interested to talk today about the way in which that civic innovation connects with new innovations, new urban models that are trying to address and to align with the circular economy. I'm going to call that the new entrepreneurial urbanism, as I'll outline in a few moments. And I think that provides a very interesting basis for thinking about how we plan for the circular economy. And in doing so, I identify 3 key challenges which we will need to address over the years ahead for that model to actually work and to address the gap between our theoretical knowledge on circular economy and actually application of those. So look, I'm hoping the presentation is going to emerge in a few moments. There we go. Thank you very much. So look, I'm delighted to be here. I'm going to talk about experimentalism and collaborative innovation as the cornerstone of trying to think about how cities and metropolitan regions think about the circular economy, and they do so within the confines of the idea of entrepreneurial urbanism, new ways of managing the circular economy. So Stephen, Serena and Shemaine have done this very well earlier in the session, where we've thought about what circular economies are. And we know that circular economies will require systems-based approach. We have got to try and find models that are more resilient, that balance between the good of people, business and the environment, and really are underpinned by a transition to renewable energy and renewable materials. The idea around recapturing waste through the notion of reducing, repairing, reusing, and through new models of production and consumption are really critical, but as I argue, will require creative skills and in particular design thinking to enable us to reach a model that is sustainable. So experimental approaches we can identify as emerging, and they've been emerging really over the last 10-15 years, partially as in the aftermath of the global financial crisis, but have been buoyed in light of COVID-19 pandemic and our need to find new models of working, particularly in cities and metropolitan areas. We could argue that experimentalism has emerged and responds to 3 areas. Firstly, wicked problems. So these are perennial and complex problems that are particularly prevalent in cities and urban areas, and where we've never satisfactorily addressed those with urban models previously. So this need to find new ways of tackling, thorny issues still remains for us. I think as Stephen, Serena and Shemaine have indicated, we've also got new missions or problems that we've got to deal with. Climate change is the most obvious, but there are other problems too, which have been highlighted by COVID. And so in that sense, we've got new COVID-induced problems too. That is around the new world, new way of working, and as Shemaine has referred to, new types of operating procedures, new business models, as she very clearly pointed out just a moment ago. These require new empirical approaches, and they really do spur a desire for innovation. We need to find new solutions for new problems of our times. We need to be able to deal with those problems in a more agile manner, a more open and agile manner. We need to find and embrace the conditions of open innovation. And what I mean by that is the idea that we tackle problems collectively, and by having what we might call in economics a market pull approach, we find new solutions to the problems that we collectively identify, rather than just thinking about innovation as an extension of new research. It's turning it on its head and thinking, well, what innovation do we need based on the problems that we're currently facing? So these are new empirical approaches, and this new desire for innovation is really stemming from a more grassroots and collective way of thinking about what the problems are in society. So no coincidence, of course, that the growth of experimentalism has coincided with the growth of the creative economy. We've got, in most countries in the world now, the creative industries represents more than 7% of employment. In some countries, particularly in the Western, global West, global North, that represents as much as 13-15% of the economy. And you can see there a fantastic report that has been produced by Deloitte, which studies some of that in relation to some of the key economies. It's worth a good read, that. To summarise that, I think, when we think about the creative industries, I do like to draw on the work of Potts and Cunningham, 2005, so it's now nearly 20 years old, but I think it's probably one of the most elegant models of thinking about the creative economy, which I think in many respects is underused. And they talk about the 4 models of the creative industries. The idea here is that the creative industries are argued to have really 4 functions. The first is sort of a welfare model to produce community arts, which are not really commercially lucrative, but are nevertheless socially important. So that's one model. The second way of thinking about creative industries is as competing with other models, other sectors in the economy. So both of those two are not interesting from the point of view of innovation. But the two that are these ideas around creative industries lead to economic growth because of indirect growth through supply chains. So the way creative practitioners spend money and boost the rest of the economy. But in the fourth area, and this is the one that is most often cited, but often little understood, and it's the idea that creative industries will lead directly to innovation in an economy, because it does so by innovating in creative sectors. Now, that's an established model. What I would like to do here is actually to build on that. I would suggest that there are at least 6 models of the creative industries. And you can see on the bottom line there, I would actually say that in terms of innovation, you've got an innovation 1, which is innovation arising from creative sectors. You've got innovation 2, which is where creativity or creative practitioners start to support other economic sectors and lead to innovation. And that third area, innovation 3, civic innovation, is experimentalism. It's where creative practices, creative practitioners, creative industries are directly getting involved in experimental modes of managing urban areas by using their creative methods in communities and in metropolitan regions. And that's really what I want to think about today. So in this sense, I would call that civic innovation. I'm talking about the new empirical methods and models that are emerging as new civic infrastructure, which support post-COVID changes and are trying to work towards a circular economy. They're characterized by being open, they're responsive, they're multi-sector, they're imaginative, they're agile. Fantastic. This won't be of any surprise to anybody who works in the creative industries. These are very common features. I'll give you two examples of this. The first one is a research innovation lab. So there's been lots of research innovation labs. I think probably one of the best to my mind is Space 10 in Copenhagen. It's run by Rebel Agency, which is literally a group of 4 artists who believe that they could run parts of public design and parts of the Copenhagen economy much better than the public sector. They developed an alliance with IKEA, and they used this space in the meat distilling area of the city as a lab and a living organism. And what they do is they conduct playful research, they curate playful conversations as a way of thinking about how to address mission, big global problems of our time. So they're conducting work on carbon banks, thinking about how to use furniture in a more circular way. They have been reimagining cities of tomorrow by embracing some of the principles of circular economies. They've been looking specifically at resources in the global south. They've been looking at materials that have been used in Mexico. Some fantastic work there. But what I'm interested in is the way in which they work with partners to tackle some of the major shifts that are happening in society, and the way in which they conduct a research and design program working at the grassroots level, and work not only at grassroots level, but working also with a diverse range of stakeholders. Now, this sort of approach has been replicated in other areas. So the other famous one is based in Oxford in the UK, is around donut economics, and I heard that mentioned earlier in today's session, and thinking about how to use some of the ideas of the donut, which you may be familiar with here, really thinking about new empirical methods and models that are more balanced between social and environmental resources, that are based on new civic infrastructure, and again are thinking about open approaches to tackling urban problems. They're responsive, they're grounded in design thinking. Now, these two examples are really, they reflect a whole host of a growth of labs that have been emerging over the last 10 years, collaborative innovation alliances, some aspects of smart cities, although smart cities are slightly different. There are some aspects of smart cities that have been replicating these ideas, the emergence of design sprints, urban rooms, tactical urbanism, quadruple helixes. The list is endless, and all of that I think we can understand as experimentalism. It's really about thinking differently about how we're going to tackle some of our problems in society. I would argue that what we're seeing here is a new entrepreneurial urbanism. So we can take the idea of entrepreneurial urbanism, which is a David Harvey concept, which is really thinking about the way in which cities transform their urban approach, the way in which they set out proactive visions and strategies, and then take action in their regions, urban regions. Now, in the 1990s and in the first few years of the new millennium, that looked like extensive urban renewal strategies. It took the form of civic boosterism, and which were manifest in new waterfront developments, post-industrial solutions, and actually the growth and massification of creative industries. What I'm interested in is this idea of a new entrepreneurial urbanism, mission-led, urban-centric, but which is based on the circular economy. And what I want to do just in the last bit of my presentation, last 5 minutes, is just to talk about the 3 major problems that we're going to have to tackle if we're serious about the circular economy. So the first problem is we've now got a serial reproduction of urban and experimental forms. We can see here just from this map from donut economic labs, the thousands that are now taking place right across the world. If we think about Copenhagen, for example, which has been very famous in setting up urban innovation labs, there are now 54 in a city of 2.5 million. So we've got a problem, and the problem is that when you have so many forms of experimentalism, what you end up with is not something that is a pioneering approach. It becomes a prototypical experiment, and you get overlapping approach and vision. So that's the first problem that we're going to have to think about in order to prevent a patchwork quilt approach. The second problem is really to do with the usual suspects. It's a question about how diverse the stakeholders are. With diversity, you get really good grassroots innovation. But in practice, what usually happens is that you get the usual suspects. So in Leicester, for example, we have over the last 5 years been running a civic training course, which is run between Leicester College, De Montfort University, where I'm at, Creative Industries, Third Sector Organisation, a CIC, and the Leicester Urban Innovation Lab. And we've been creating a lab approach to reimagining the city. Each year we deal with a particular site or problem. We work with the City Council, with the third sector, a number of stakeholders, and try and find solutions, bringing together students, communities, professional experts, etc., and investors. And that has been fantastic over the last 5 years. We've been able to, for example, find solutions to redundant buildings by thinking about more imaginative developments that are really very useful. But the problem that we have is it places citizens at the heart of the innovation, and it's excellent in finding new solutions. But we find that on average over the last 5 years, there's been a 95% dropout of students. They're interested at the point of prototyping and ideating, but when it comes to delivery, they're less interested. And we find that that is the case with professional stakeholders too. And what we usually end up with are the usual stakeholder suspects, the innovation lab, the third sector, and the city council. That is a problem because you lose some of the dynamism that you get from multi-sector stakeholders. So we've got to find a solution for that. The third problem, and I'll really end on this note, is one of financial sustainability. These experimental approaches in cities are fantastic, and they're really a viable way of trying to realise the circular economy. But they're difficult to operate within public mindsets. They get at the space that public authorities can't, because they don't think about risk, they're more playful in their approach, and they work beyond the limitations of outputs and targets, which are known to stifle creativity. But they're difficult to fund in third sectors. We find that we need the public sector money to run some of these experimental approaches, but we don't want that to come with the baggage of the risk registers and the targets that come from needing to have accountability of public money. We need to find a way beyond that. So just to summarise then, the new entrepreneurial urbanism, which is based on creativity and grassroots design, for me is key to supporting circular economies. But the gap between theoretical understanding and practical application requires more research in the years ahead. Three questions that we've got to tackle. Will mass creation of labs or experimental approaches create a damaging patchwork quilt approach in cities that we're going to end up having to solve in a few years? Do the usual suspects, the usual stakeholders, actually limit the reach for creativity and innovation? And thirdly, do the funding options mean that we revert entrepreneurial urbanism back into the public sector so that we've got the usual public sector approaches and all the limitations that necessarily involves? So thanks for listening for me today. Thank you very much, and invite any questions which we'll answer in a few minutes. Over to you, Stephen, Dr. Stephen.
Right. Cities are increasingly seen as having an important role in tackling societal challenges related to climate change, while collaborative innovation is increasingly accepted as a new way of working for authorities. According to the presentation, explore the role of collaborative innovation to tackle global challenges on the city level in the context of the city and its vision on sustainability and livability. The municipality needs to take different roles. There is a multi-level collaborative innovation model that allows for different co-creative partnerships joining forces in sustainability challenges. It can be concluded that authorities have a key role in infrastructuring these co-creative partnerships. Thank you, Professor Rachel Granger. Okay, let's turn to the open discussion. Let's have all the panelists on board, please. Okay, Charmaine, are you there? Here we are. Okay. Oh dear, it's not a good evening, isn't it? All this internet connection is really driving you all over the places. Anyway, so Serena, you are muted. Make
We're
sure all
stabilized.
unmute.
It's all good now, right, Shemaine?
All right.
Professor.
Yeah, all
Charmaine,
good already. I was just drinking some water. I didn't want everybody to see me drink water and eat my snacks.
Okay, never mind. But I think there's only Rachel. Your connection is good. Okay, so far, but mine is all over the place. But nonetheless, here we are again. Thank you very much. All back on the panels here. Let's turn to the open discussion. Right, let's set the scene before we get into the further discussion. Also, based on the presentation earlier on, to all panelists. The circular economy is presented as a sustainable solution as opposed to the current linear model of production and resource management, whose effects impact negatively on the economic, social, and environmental dimensions. To pave the way for new conceptual developments in organizational capabilities to make transition sustainable and serve as a support, an arsenal for the maturation of circular economy. So, panelists, which are the most relevant and factors influence the relationship between creativity and innovation management practices supporting circular economy initiative?
Professor Rachel.
Okay, Rachel, let's start from you then.
Yeah, I think Rachel needs to take that one. I was like,
I'm happy to go first, and I suppose
yes,
I
please,
talked about this
Rachel.
a little bit in the presentation. To my mind, you get the best solutions where you've got co-creation. Serena will know that because she knows from an architectural principle that you get the best solutions once you've understood everybody around the table and can empathize with what their needs are. So I think the notion of co-creation is incredibly important. I think there's then the reality of how you do that. And what I think increasingly in our growing cities and regions, we are going to have to find a way of institutionalizing co-creation, if I can put it that way. We've got to find a way where everybody takes responsibility for co-creating, getting around a table, not just saying the circular economy is somebody else's problem, the private sector, the public sector, whatever different sectors are involved. I think everybody has to take responsibility. And that probably requires a new mindset. It requires a bit more civic education, either through the education systems or within communities or different sectors. And I think only then are we going to get everybody around the table, and only then can we start to really think about what the solutions are. There's a whole host of other problems around delivery of solutions and how we finance them, of course, but the starting point has to be that we've got to get different stakeholders around the table, and we've got to collectively come up with the creative problem solving.
It's not
Okay.
it's not so easily done in the Asian context, I think, and perhaps in that way, the Western model, and I mean this only in a cultural way, nothing to do with diversity or anything. I think it's it's a opening up of basically getting everybody's on board. In our field, we call it collaboration, but there's always a finite time to collaboration, whichever way we go. We can do this for a very long time, or we can, we have a collaboration time, and we have to basically look at what those solutions are going to be at the end of it. There's a time, not an overextension, I guess. That's one aspect. We see in the city of New York City, for example, when they did the Big U project, there's a lot of public engagement with regards to, what's the best way of protecting New York City, for example, when we know climate change is going to happen. What's the best way to protect Penang, for example, and taking into a context. As we know, temperature is rising, but also seawater is rising, these kind of things. So, yeah, I mean, I think it is the way to move forward. But I think then the mechanism is seeing the time, I think. I'm not sure if that becomes a factor.
I think the other aspect is, and then I'll allow other people to talk, of course, but is one of risk. It's risky. Experimental approaches are risky endeavours. They're inherently risky. And of course, we all live in a world, whether that is the global north or south or wherever we are today, we live in a world where we're not very good at taking risks because our public sectors are not geared up for that, and our investment sectors, although they're risky, they're actually quite risk averse. And so we need to find ways of engaging with risk, and engaging with risk in a more playful way without, being stifled by targets and everything else that comes with it. And that really requires some new leadership, I think. And I think, Stephen, you were talking about new approaches to leadership to tackle circular economies. And I think, that's the other aspect that we need to consider here.
I can add on to Rachel's
Yes,
point.
please, Charmaine. Yes.
I was actually, what I know best is I work with a lot of organization. So I think it really starts with organizational culture. And I think a culture and an organization really impacts the level of creativity, the risk appetite, what's that, psychological safety, right? Being open enough to share your ideas without the fear of being shut down. So I think a culture that values and rewards creativity and innovation is very important to adopt all these circular economy efforts, So I just want to say organizational culture.
True.
Right. Okay. Thank you, ladies. This is important, of course, like what Serena just mentioned about the West and the East, and we have the different approach, and especially culturally, and then the way we're doing.
Matured. We haven't matured. I think that's the we haven't opened. We haven't allowed. We've restricted ourselves, and we haven't opened up to that level. The creative scene probably is much more at the global, purely at that level, but when we go down to the next one,
Yeah, it's true. If you go down to the root, it's all different interpretation, of course, especially in the 21st current context. Okay, let's move on. To what extent does a different context, like example, like the sizes, industry policy, influence the role of such a practices in supporting circular economy initiative?
Well, shall I start again? I'm happy to get the
Oh yeah,
conversation.
go ahead.
Sure.
Please, Rachel. Yes, Rachel.
I mean,
Yes,
I'll just say this very succinctly, actually, that I think the emergence of a whole range of labs and design sprints and new business models that Shemaine was talking about, the growth in need for creative skills that also Shemaine was talking about, is an indication that existing models are not working. And I think we know that. I know that's quite a bold statement, but I think that's been in evidence since the global financial crash. We've been seeing new models, new ways of working, but I think COVID exposed the frailties of that. We saw during COVID that people actually were able to take a moment to reflect on where they were at in society and realize that across the board, the models were not working. And so I think we're in an era where we're going to see new models emerging all the time, and the explosion of labs and co-creative methods and experimental approaches is an indication that things are not working, and we haven't embraced the models that we need for circular economies, and it's now being passed to the people to create their own approaches. It's a much flatter hierarchy for the moment, and they're taking control in a way.
Yeah, I mean, true. What we've seen in like what I was trying to show in the Eco-Medi, all this exploration with regards to materials, concrete, the biggest material that we see in all the construction is now being created out of algae. And that's amazing. So these labs, these mini labs, are running in parallel, and there's, as you said, a lot more people like want to see the new ideas. We want to see what can we actually do. And I think I'm very hopeful. You call it labs, and labs is another word for research, but it's smaller, it's more agile, as you said, and it's able to intercept into the very conservative to the non-conservative, because by the fact that it's a lab. So I think that's a very interesting thing. Yeah, it's true.
Okay, Shemaine, what about you? What is your thought? What are your thoughts?
I think Rachel and Serena worded it really well. But I think if I can add anything is, we know that we work with freelancers, and for them to understand just simple things like value and supply chain better can definitely address industry issues and also improve their own in-house practices. I mean, we're talking about, becoming more efficient, less waste, energy and all that, right? So just having industry players like freelancers understand those simple logic, it sounds so simple, but it actually helps them a long way. I think that's what I'm trying to push for lah. And of course, I would like to talk about funding, so having this, I think I see this a lot, and even for Cult Creative, right? When I was trying to raise funds last year for the company, it was so hard because everybody's like, why want to support a network platform for creative people? What's the growth? What are you guys supporting? What industry? And I was super uphill battle. So I think Stephen, later I'm sure you have a question for me about funding accessibility for creative people. So I'll take on that question later.
Later on, when along the way, yes. You have just mentioned about the organization earlier on, so I like to hear from your view. How can inter-organizational collaboration facilitate circular economy initiative?
Wow, it's a big question. I think just like you guys said, right, collaboration and really just making the first step. For us, I gave you the example of Mirip just now. So Mirip came about because we wanted to address cross-border experiences, and I think that as much as we are living post-COVID, people should be more globalized. We kind of still need to like share with them and bring on all these dialogues like what you're doing right now. So Mirip is a very good example of what the efforts that we're doing. We're working with a metaverse in player, just to show that using creativity, pushing boundaries instead of just showcasing on Zoom like us right now or StreamYard, we can go into the metaverse. So it's really forcing it down on like people's throats and, showcasing the work of creative people and really pushing through that dialogue, asking tough questions, right? Forcing people to really think about what they can do better, push their boundaries, break glass ceilings. Hope I answered the question well.
No, it's fine. It's just a thought. There's no like a finite answer. It has to be that way because I'm looking for everybody's different thought. I think that's how the discussion take place. I think we lost Rachel actually. So now
We
what happened to
have,
Rachel?
she'll
Yeah,
connect. She'll connect
yeah,
again.
yeah. Okay, right. Okay. So what about you, Serena? How can inter-organizational collaboration facilitate circular economy initiatives?
I'm seeing movement, in the big with the big guys. They realize that the small guys are the ones who are shifting and changing the landscape really. Shemaine, I've heard your name from Rashid, from the bank RHB, because my daughter was running the innovation lab, so your name came up.
Amazing.
So I think that as I said that. Because labs are basically by nature, the sound of it is exploration. Um, these bigger entities are looking for that. They're looking for the injection. It actually, the adage of it's in the small details really comes from that. So I think very positive of the opportunities here for that to happen.
Can I add one more
Okay.
thing?
Yeah, sure, please.
I realized that Petronas has also started their seed lab, and they're really, going like Serena said just now, right? The bigger boys have realized that they need to do something more. There needs to be more
Yeah,
agile efforts, right?
yeah.
And not just Petronas, Maybank. They have all this innovation arm, that's scouting out, smaller
Yeah.
companies, tech startups, and bringing in like
Mhm.
corporate innovation. They tried to, but
Yeah,
everybody was working. I think people see the importance of that, and moving super agile, like you said, and adaptable. Yeah.
They're being clever though. The big guys
Yeah.
are. I'll set you up. I'm not quite related to you just yet, but when you do good, it's good for us.
Yeah. Everybody tag along. I know that. There's a how the model they're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
Serena, let's stay with you. Okay. Engaging with built environment professional to better understand their perceptions, knowledge, practice, challenges, and possible pathways for the adoption of the regenerative and circular approach in the built environment. I would like to be more explore, which is to be explore a bit more from you. What is the perception and awareness of built environment professional regarding the application of circular economy and regenerative design concept in the built environment?
I don't think it's as agile as the creative in the sense, because it's not pen to paper, pen to image, pen to whatever. It's actually building something. In everybody's minds, it's supposed to be built for 20 years or 30 years or all the rest of it. I think the biggest challenges to us in the field is really that our paymasters do not have the same, are not running in parallel to, by nature, our paymasters really want to expand the business. And what we're trying to say is be clever with the business. In other words, we don't need to expand. We can do adaptive reuse. We can, go into all these kind of things. But everyone wants to look at the financial expansion, especially in the built environment. So our biggest challenges are really our paymasters.
Great.
It's
How
still the
to yeah.
same here as well. We still have like 60, 90-day payment terms for like a project as small as like 10 to 30K. It's
Because they're giving us the opportunity, right? But they're also basically saying, well, we want it bigger, we want it taller. We come in and we say, well, I think you don't really need it to be much bigger than that. You'll be able to, create something that's going to be very usable, but very sustainable, and all these other, and consider all these things, and it's not going to be much more expensive. So we're limited by the vision of our co-creators, if you like, in that way. Yeah, that's a better word.
Okay,
to
Serena. Serena, let's take it further. How to build environment professionals perceive existing sector practices and sustainability tools in the light of circular economy and regenerative design concepts?
There's quite a bit of uptake on that. They see the tools as useful. I think we haven't reached to regenerative yet. We're really still at not restore, but less. So we haven't gone to the next stage, which is restore in such a big way. And we haven't gone to regenerative. So it's an aspiration, but it's an aspiration I feel we need to get to very, very quickly, because we are not in the position where we are now in the climate change to even think less. Hope that
Okay.
answers it. Lost Charmaine as
I'm
well.
not sure. Oh, here we are,
I'm back.
Charmaine.
I had to plug my laptop.
Power.
But Serena, do you know Nexi, the bioarchitecture, like the one in?
I met the original biomimicry lady from the US.
That's
and
so cool.
She was at Dubai. We opened together the Planet and the People and Planet conference together, and absolutely biomimicry, adaptive to biomimetics is the way. There's a bit more science to it. There's a little bit more research, but actually, if you think about it, the guys who do traditional buildings and traditional architecture basically are already doing that without looking like it's a scientific artifact in that way. But when you start to go to much bigger entities, and I think really for me, tall buildings are no longer the way of the future. They really are basically to bring down the scale of our building, because we can basically get more biomimicry, bioadaptive to our environment. That's my personal. But yeah, biomimicry, absolutely.
I like the
the
keyword
future.
biomimicry. Yeah, Charmaine, let's come to you. Okay, from an empirical point of view, there are various research analyzing the general link between innovation and employment, but relatively few analyses for the specificities of creativity and innovations. Creativity and innovation may be regarded as the most important driver of circular economies, especially concerning innovation, causing higher resource productivity. For this assessment, for the assessment of these employment effects of a circular economy, it is therefore crucial to consider the relationship between creative industry and the employment. So, Charmaine, can you tell us, can creative economy assist the transition to a circular economy in your point of view?
Definitely. Number one, I think that there is no algorithm for creativity, regardless of chat GPT and whatnot. I mean, we can use it to help us, not destroy us. I really believe that way, and creativity cannot be replaced. Why it's so important? I mean, we're developing new business models, right? And I see creativity not just design; it's also a lot of problem solving. I myself, I don't I see myself as a creative because um,
You're
yes, I don't.
all the
I,
Yes, you are.
but
Shemaine, yes, you are.
I don't design. I'm not that traditional like artisanal, but problem solving skills and all these are like
Mhm.
like real innovation, all that, right? So I think it helps with the development of new business models, products, services, and definitely, yeah. Did I answer the question? Correct. That was a loaded question. I don't know. I
It
didn't
was
know which part
very
I needed to answer.
long,
Yeah,
very
I
long.
lost. Maybe we need to like make it an easier question because I was trying to think about the first part and I forgot what your last
You did
question was.
well. You did well. I think as what you're trying to say, it's creative is non-scientific, and but the two are needed for each other. You can come up with more creative ideas for the science if you are not in it completely, but we also need the science for some of the
Yeah.
creative. Yeah, I
So
see that.
I think that's how all this interdisciplinary and cross-disciplinary take place. So because you need each other. So art and science is no longer just two separate boxes. So it should be emerge. So
Oh,
okay,
can I add? Now I remember.
yeah,
And thank you so
yeah.
much, Serena, for rewording that so eloquently. I wanted to say that, based on our. Can you guys hear me? Oh, okay. So
Yeah,
based
yeah.
on what we see in Cult Creative with the data, a lot of creative professionals are working 2 to 3 jobs now. A lot of them are no longer specialized, which, back in the day, we always talk about, being specialized, being a champion in your field or industry, right? But right now, a lot of the creatives can be a graphic designer, but they are also motion designers, photography. So because of the future of work and because a lot of people want fast pace, quick, they're still treating creative people like, give me one graphic design in 3 hours, right? So a lot of the young Gen Zs and millennials now, I realize that they have evolving skill sets, right? So, for example, my graphic designer now can also do animation. She's also learning how to do typography. So, and I think that's really encouraging because last time you only want to be focused on your field, but I think opening them up to evolving industries within the creative industry is so good because then you get to meet more people and then you get to learn more and thrive more. So yeah, I just wanted to add on to that evolving skill set point.
Okay. Right. Let's look at the which is creative economy. Since you mentioned the creative economy, and also you have presented, there's a few things which is coming to my mind. How creative economy fields of action in terms of design, procurement, production, distribution, consumption, and recover are contributing towards sustainability, like economic, environmental, and social performance in Malaysia and other countries in Southeast Asia.
Can you
Uh,
specify? Yeah, Serena, go first.
that
No, no,
was
I no, I'm asking Charmaine. Yeah.
repeat the last bit. I think
Yeah,
before the
Okay.
spill
it felt like
Um.
a general line. Maybe
statement.
you can, yeah, it felt like a statement. Maybe you can specify
Okay.
what.
How creative economy fields of action, this including design, procurement, production, distribution, consumption, and recover, are contributing towards sustainability.
Do they think about sustainability when they're
Yeah.
contributing?
Yeah.
Is what
Towards sustainability
the
performance in
creative,
Malaysia
the
and other
creative.
countries in Southeast Asia. Yeah.
I can't speak on a lot of people, but I know I can give a personal example. 3 years ago, when I was still doing Tish Events, my event company, we were so inspired by B Corp. And when I talk to my peers in the event industry, as much as we want to go B Corp, we want to think sustainable efforts like designing modular structures, reusing certain wood, metals, only printing we cannot run away because it's different clients branding and whatnot, but going towards modular design, certain sizes and cuts can be repackaged, right? So we were working towards that direction, but unfortunately, like Serena said just now, like Asian countries, I think a lot of the brands that we were working for were not amused by that. And in Western country, there's this huge event agency called Bureau Bata, and they are doing for brands like Dior, massive brands, and they're all about reusing natural resources. Unfortunately, I don't think we're ready yet, but I think it's something that our local companies are discussing already, and I think B Corp is something that a lot of companies are aspiring to work. Those standards, right? They're aspiring to work towards that.
Okay, according to your experience, which action contributes to achieving sustainability performance in creative industry?
I think I can't speak about a lot of the other industries. I don't know, but when I was in the event industry, we were using a lot of tarpaulin, all this really wasteful sort of material. So when we pitch to some of the clients, we say instead of using one-off things, maybe we can use cardboards. Maybe we can reuse certain steel structures or design it in a modular way that you can actually use it for your upcoming events instead of just that one-off event, looks good, done. And you'll be surprised, like what Serena says, there's so much wastage when it comes to this our event industry. So there were some of the smaller efforts that we tried to do, just modular designs, using more natural resources, going back to the steel supplier, wood carpenter, seeing what sort of scraps we can make out of it for our clients, and sort of telling them that, hey, there's a newsworthiness here, just and you can launch your campaign and show that you're also pushing for sustainable efforts as well. So I can say that for my previous company.
Hey, Professor Rachel.
Oh, here we are.
Welcome back, Rachel.
I'm sorry
Rachel,
about that.
Okay, you're back for the finale.
That is the key. Okay, I know that unbelievable the internet connection nowadays. Okay, but never mind. It's not your turn yet. Don't worry about that. So I'm still digging. Charmaine. Yeah, let's stay with you, Charmaine. We are not done yet, actually. Okay, what are the issues and challenges of each action to achieve sustainability performance according to those are the actions you have just mentioned?
What are the issues? Number one,
the issue and the challenges. Yeah,
buy-in, client buy-in.
Buy-in. Yes, there's definitely client buy-in, because number one, they want to look like similar to architecture and what you were saying, right? They want to be the most luxe. They want the most customized items. They don't want to skim on materials. When I try to sell them, like, use cardboards, use this other not cheaper, more. It looks like metal, but it's not metal. They're like, no, it doesn't look like it's gonna hold. So it's definitely brand buy-in and education. I think education is definitely lacking here, and I think if they start seeing other bigger brands do it, then I suppose that can be a thing that can roll over. But a lot of things are still quite wasteful here.
Okay, what measure across the action in each participating country can be adopted to improve sustainability performance so far? Because you have been travel quite a few places, as also you have some which is branches in different places, like one you just launched in Jakarta. So what are the measures actually across this action?
I think, Charmaine, what can be done now is that you're relying more on the digital and reusing the digital platforms rather than the other platforms in order to get messaging across, and that's one way of cutting it down. Of course, with the digital, it's hopefully connected to some sustainable source, but that's one way. I think it's a Charmaine may have some others. People want to still have exhibitions. I have we have one of the largest exhibitions in this year, but the exhibition organizer asked, I'm going to have 3,000 people come. What can I do to be a bit more sustainable in the approach that I'm doing this exhibition? I'm going to bring so many people. It's the water that I'm supplying to there. It's the food. It's everything throughout the whole event. How can I make it impactful with less? I guess that's a challenge.
That's a good point. I just remembered one of our brands, Adidas, is one of the champions for this, because when we do any events for them, no plastics allowed. It goes down to like wooden cups. I mean, paper cups, wooden fork and spoon. So they're down to the nitty gritty. Even using certain things like acrylic boards, they really don't want us to do that. Anything, there are brands doing that. So I don't know how to measure them, but I can see that brands are slowly adopting this.
Yeah, true. Exactly. I just went to the event last week, and also a certain brand that they're behaving the same way, and also they reduce all the plastic bag and no more plastic bag. You had to bring your own bag and things like that. There's many big corporate and also event also behaving the same way. Then you need to bring your own container for like food takeaway, things like that. Okay. Right, Rachel, you're back. Good to see you. Good to see you. You're on
We
time,
missed you,
Rachel.
Rachel. We missed you.
Wow. Okay, Rachel. I have some taking note. The things you have presented is really exciting, and also getting me to think about that. And also, I have done some research, and some of the findings here I'd like to find out from you. According to the United Nations, more than 70% of the world's population will be living in the city by 2050, placing strains on housing and related needs, energy supply, transportation infrastructure, water resources, and public spaces. However, smart sustainability cannot be achieved via technology alone. Similar to any spatial planning exercise, it has to start with collective reflection on the existing context, identifying issues that would require technological and other solutions. This approach to smart technology is strongly predicated on a neoliberal economic growth agenda by which the discourse and deployment of smart technologies are construed in the hegemonic images of digital, entrepreneurial, and sustainable city in order to support a numerous worldview as to how city should function. Perhaps we can return to the basic and ask the simple questions here. Rachel, what should be the vision of social economic development, especially nowadays?
Dr. Stephen, that's a huge area. But look, I think it's a really important question. So it's a great question. I don't know if I can answer it by thinking about the whole world. And look, one of the fantastic things about what has happened today is we've got this fantastic event which has happened online, and which we were not very good at doing. It happened periodically before COVID, but as a result of COVID and having to think about solutions very quickly, technological solutions very quickly, we're really okay with this. We're very comfortable about coming together from different parts of the world and talking about these really big problems. It's a fantastic way of thinking about it. Now, if we can take that same mindset and apply it to, as you say, the big challenges and visions that we're going to need in our metropolitan areas, that would be fantastic. In the UK, I'm just going to talk about the UK for a moment, and maybe others will share their views on the vision. I wouldn't say it's the most important point, but one of the big conversations at the moment is how our high streets need to change. Our high streets are where our retail areas of our cities are. And so the question is, because people are working hybrid at home and not using retail in the same way, and because of e-commerce and everything else, we are going to have to rethink what our retail areas of our cities are going to look like and what role they play. And as always, we get some of the public stakeholders thinking in terms of how do we repair and bring it back to how it was. And that's a classic example of how we need new mindsets, because rather than repairing and restoring, what we need to think about is, well, that's a fantastic opportunity to rethink and revision an important part of our city. And I would suggest that these retail areas can change enormously into sharing space. We need to think about sharing economies. We need to think about recycling economies, repairing economies. All of these could be brought into the old retail areas, and we can reimagine those parts of the city. So that's what's happening in the UK. And there are quite a few alternative and experimental stakeholders trying to push for that. But I would suggest in other countries, what we need to do is exactly the same, seize opportunities to rethink what the role and look of cities and regions needs to be. And challenge. I think challenge public stakeholders and investors about what that could look like.
Should we aim at sustainable development, rectifying an inequitable society rather than polarizing it, addressing barriers to language, culture, education, disabilities, and participation, or following? How can entrepreneurial urbanism contribute to all this?
Well, look, I think what we've seen over the last 40 years as a dominant urban model, which has been about urban renewal, professionals in the city, money in the city, which is all good. That's how you get growth economies, but it's been polarizing. And what this does, what circular economy does, is enables us to revisit who has right to the city, who is the city for, and how do we make sure that we apply the same principles of circular economy, which is about balancing. How do we make sure that we balance so that we get a diversity of people in a city or a region? Because from that diversity, you get more interesting lives. The truth is, when we have city centres or central business districts, with just the very, very rich and the very wealthy, you get a monoculture, which is not very interesting or inspiring. And actually, this gives us a fantastic opportunity to revisit that and reset who the cities are about and what their roles are. So yeah, it's a great way of addressing some of that polarizing habits.
You mentioned about the locality. Okay, let's look at what kind of developmental strategy can local authorities formulate against the path shaping forces emanating from outside the locality.
Sorry, say that again, Stephen. I missed.
Okay, what kind of developmental strategy can local authorities formulate against the path shaping forces emanating from outside the locality?
I think the difficulty is public sectors can't. Public sectors are trapped in this public-private partnership. They rely on private investors to grow and to renew their cities. It's a really tricky one. So I'm not blaming them. I understand why that happens. What I'm saying is, rather than getting trapped into that, what the community sector people have got to do is to get into that partnership. So it's a public, private and people partnership, PPP. That's what we've got to try and get. And this is where third sectors, where communities, where different interest groups can get involved in that to make sure it's a much wider decision. The decisions are not just about public and private. It should have, Serena knows this from architecture, the best partnership.
We are, Dr. Stephen, we are doing that even in our context here. There is engagement in the community, and sometimes basically there are workshops that are done with the community to get the engagement and get their, first of all, not only some feedback, but some ideas, some feedback, and their their involvement in it, so that they're part of the process. So we're seeing that in parts of Kuala Lumpur. We're seeing that in parts of Penang. Those are already happening here. So yeah.
And it's about not paying what we'd call lip service. So, it's about public governance as co-creation and genuine co-creation, not just asking for their opinions, but actually making sure that people are totally involved in the decision-making process.
Yeah,
That's where we've got to get to.
Yeah, as long as when you're doing it, you're basically the ones that are leading those labs actually are basically saying, these are positive ideas, they're not negative ideas. They're basically these can be solutions. So it's all about, I think it's all about how you put it forward. You can come there with, I don't think you should be doing this. I don't think you should be doing that. But if you're saying there is a problem with this, and do we think we can find a better solution? So it's how to I'm not saying that that's a twist of words or anything. It's really about showing that it is about creating potentials out of problems. And
Rachel,
seeking,
in your
yeah.
thank you, thank you, Serena. Rachel, in your point of view, how has the form and function of the urban political economy across the city changed over the past decades?
I think we've seen a lost decade. We've still had some of the problems from the fallout from the global financial crash are still been playing out over the last decade, even right up to COVID. And we've not fully recovered from 2006-07. We're still playing catch up, and then we've had a pandemic which has put us back. So we're still totally recovering. And I suppose, to answer the question, I'm not sure that I think we've been what we call firefighting. We've been in responsive mode for so long that actually it seems crass to say this, but I think, as Serena's just said, and I think Shemaine said it as well, actually, this is a breath of fresh air. What has happened with COVID, as sad as it is, has given us an opportunity for reset. And it's the reset that allows us to think about new models. And what we've got to do is to educate some of the stakeholders into telling them what new models look like, but also encourage them to take the risks of new models. And only then will we get to, really good, balanced, circular economies.
Okay, Rachel, I want your view as an academic, as a scholar yourself. What is the most sophisticated way of theorizing the global sense of space in urban governance?
Oh my goodness me.
Wow, I'm just looking at it.
Intellectually, there's a Marxist approach which is around spatial fixing. The idea that you invest in shape certain types of cities as a fix, that is to say, as a way of continuing to make profit, because profit exhausts after a while. And the reason why I say that is that creative industries was a classic way of cities redesigning themselves and being and growing again. And actually, circular economies will do exactly the same. There's a huge potential here to invest in a new model, a new way of thinking and being in urban areas that will actually restore economic profit. So I suppose, to answer your question, if we were to theorize it, I think what we could say is that circular economies are a spatial fix for the urban problems of our times.
Okay, thank you. open up for Q&A. Let's check out the question. What do we have? The question? I think I have seen some question posted.
Oh yeah, I've got the capitalist one, so the guy.
Oh, okay.
You know,
I feel like the approach you are taking.
yes,
What
is
kind of
excessive
question?
in the first place. Basically,
Oh, okay. This is
why are we
this is
building?
for
Why are we
yeah.
building?
This is for Serena. Yeah, I feel like the approach you are taking to sustainability is a very capitalistic approach. Isn't it better not to build in excess in the first place? For example, the pavilion didn't have to exist in the first place. Okay, over to you, Serena. What is your thought? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's true. Basically, you're saying why does Expo exist anyway in the first place? Exhibitions like this, you know, we have a United Nations call for meeting. Everyone now can actually attend through the laptop. We don't actually have to be there. No one needs to get onto the airplane to talk about where climate change is happening. Everyone can get on laptop. It's true that we don't need to build at all. At the moment, we have a glut in Malaysia, for example, but we have 7 billion people. I think we would be naive to think that we're going to stop building. It's almost like saying we're going to stop riding a bicycle. Bicycle is less, of course. We're going to stop driving the cars. We need to change our model of how we build. Yes, we need to change the model of our transportation. When I showed this sort of spaghetti junction, I'm not for the spaghetti junction. I'm for everybody living closer to where they work and in closer communities and proximity and connect by internet or work from home. I'm all for that. My daughter works from home most of the time. But if you have to build, then build less or build with less. The best way forward, is to grow our materials. This whole thing we talk about algae for concrete instead. If we're going to build, then build for less. If we're going to build with biodegradable material because that's the full life cycle. And if we're going to build, then push for adaptive reuse, for example, as a first step, where possible. But your families are growing, you have children, they also want to own a house, they live in your home for quite a while, and then they expand. So I think, yes, the question to the expo was, why even have expo, if that's the question. But if you're going to build, then try to show that there are better ways of doing it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that actually. And I think adaptive reuse is absolutely key, but I think multi-use and flexible use is really important as well. And that's me coming from an academic who, now is working in a hybrid way at home and on campus. Universities, have a big campus in most cases, and universities and other employers could use their space more flexibly, their materials, buildings more flexibly, so that we don't have to carry on building unnecessarily. So yeah, I think Serena's making a really good point there.
Can I add one more point?
Yes, please, Jermaine, please.
So I know this is one of a company in called Creative. They're hiring creative professionals, and they're called Scalable. And they're actually an arm from Paramount Group. I don't know whether you know, Serena, but it's a very new arm. And if you know Paramount Group, they're like building like condos, shopping mall, construction. So what they've done is they also have a co-working space called Collabs. And when we were working there for a bit, they took us on a tour, and they actually talk a lot about designing the space better, so they understand co-working spaces, people preferring hybrid work arrangements, and they also use the leftover wood from all the construction to build the tables in the co-working space. So they've launched this arm called Scalable, and what it does is it works with so COVID happened, right, and a lot of companies downsized, empty buildings, empty offices. So what they've done is they've actually engaged Scalable to co-lease a space within the co-working space and actually custom built based on the company's needs. So they don't, for example, Ogilvy, right, big time creative agency, has gone from renting out a massive office space to actually renting a space in a co-working space to a team of just 30, because they understand it's hybrid right now. People are taking turns to come into office. They only come in for brainstorms. So I think people are definitely understanding that this is the future of work, and also this is a lot more sustainable, and they understand that their professionals want flexibility. They want to, have deep flow when it comes to working at home. So I think companies are moving that way as well.
But the UK is on 4 days a week, I heard, Professor Rachel. Is that true? And it was such a success that
Nobody wants to go back. Yeah,
to-
everybody says
It's
no.
it's been trialled, and I think the results were really positive. The only thing I'd say is they did trial that, I think, in Sweden. I think it was Sweden about 10 years ago. It didn't work so well, and they've reverted back to 5 days a week. But yeah, I think there's an opportune moment to really think about these models and to challenge them and to refresh them. So yeah, we could well be going to a sort of 3 or 4 day model, I think.
Great. Thanks for all your great thought behind that. Okay, let's come back to our dialogue here. Let's delve into another prospect. Despite the growing interest in both circular economy initiative and inter-organizational collaboration, more generally, there is a lack of research about how instrument processes and structures in the area of the creativity innovation management can favor the implementation of circular economy initiative. So, panel, how can the benefits of diverse stakeholders be harnessed through the management of creativity innovation processes?
I think I think by virtue of calling it creative and innovative means that it's ever evolving and changing. I think that's where it springs from, and so the opportunity for me, the base of that is still research, and you need some of that to really spring your creative and innovation, because without some fundamentals, then you're just basically, jumping in all directions. So I think that you're missing one element in that creative and innovation, and that's got to be an element of research, because it's really fundamental.
I think
Yes,
I think
it is. The
we're in
research
this-
is still the fundamental. Yeah.
Yeah,
Rachel,
I
please.
agree with that. I think that has to be the basis, but I think we can qualify that. I think research can take lots of different forms, and in this new world that we're in, we should encourage that. So I think there's a few things. One is that we should encourage research to take different forms, including citizens' role in that. So the role of citizen science, for example. The second thing is that we should make sure that there are no barriers to new entry from alternative type researchers. That could be community groups or whatever, or it could be people that are just challenging the status quo, and they must have entry so that they can be heard in a good way. And the third thing is that we should try endeavour for research to be as playful as it can be, so that we don't marginalise important voices. And it's really important to get all of the voices so that we get the right solutions. So I think they would be the three things from me.
I think to add, you talked about stakeholders, and this is something that I can see quite prevalently, because I'm not only working with the creative professionals and the organizations hiring them, but I'm also working with VCs, government. So I think it's an ecosystem thing, right? When you talk about stakeholders, everybody needs to understand that, what's the goal, right? Are we all working towards the same goal, or is there, VCs coming in with a different angle. But I noticed that there is a growing bunch of VC funds that are focused on ESG and creative businesses in ESG as well. So that's really cool. And governments now are really supportive of sustainable efforts, and they've been very supportive with Cult Creative because they know that we're trying to push for diversity, pushing better dialogue, and this is ultimately gonna help improve the creative economy. So what I'm trying to say is ecosystem, government, fund, money guys, B2B, B2C, everybody needs to understand that it's an ecosystem.
And also, therefore, to use different language. So we need to have the boundary switchers within that ecosystem that can use different language for different stakeholders to make sure that everybody's brought in. And interestingly, in Leicestershire, we've been working with MIT in America to formulate an innovation strategy for our region. And one of the things that we've decided is not to use the word innovation because we find that alienates quite a lot of stakeholders who feel that because they imagine innovation to look like Apple or one of these very high-tech brands, whereas actually innovation is creative problem solving and imagining and new sort of thinking. And so actually we need to use different language for different groups.
Okay, thank you. Let's look at three of your professional background is diverse, different. So according to your practice professionally, which are the micro foundation triggering collaboratively developed circular economy initiative?
I think the biggest shift in sort of my generation is thinking that collaboration is the way to move forward. I think prior to practicing prior to my time, the idea was more non-collaborative. It was more linear, and so that has shifted. Opportunities, I think, that you have a goal, but you can enhance that even further with the collaboration. So that's the shift for us.
Yeah, Charmaine, please.
For Cult Creative, we realized the importance of knowledge sharing and beyond Malaysia, learning from different countries and their experiences, co-creation, which is collaboration, and network effects. So we're launching this new thing called collaboration feature, right? Where we're not just using our matching system to match one designer to one employer, but based on data points, we can actually match the right team to one brand. So if Serena, you're launching your 50th anniversary, party, and you need a team of event people and social media and graphic designer, you can type in the brief, and based on the data points, we can match you to professionals that have already been in the property industry, have done, the efforts so that it matches better. So I think it's using technology and also keywords, and just doing better network effects, better matching.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That sounds really exciting, actually. So what about Rachel? In your practice, I believe you involve many projects out there.
Yeah.
So what is your thought? What are your thoughts?
Well, actually, funnily enough, in the UK at the moment, it's funny that people involved in creative industries are almost seen a bit negatively at the moment because they're seen as being hyper profit making, and there has been a shift back to cultural industries. So cultural practitioners, so dancers, arts, heritage, are seen as being socially valuable, but creative industries not so, because they're seen as being profit making and all about themselves. So I think that we might even need a strategy in the next 5 years to rebrand creative industries as being of social value and good. And I think often they don't understand that they've got the skills that could be harnessed to put our cities and economies back into business. So we need a bit of a rebranding exercise, if anything.
Steve, this sounds to me that sustainability is asking creativity and
Think so.
innovation to change its name. Interesting.
Thank you. Thank you.
like
Okay,
that. Something
this
came
is
out.
for Charmaine. Okay, this is for Charmaine. What is one piece of advice you would offer a young professional looking to get into the circular economy?
Ooh. I would advise them, following from what Rachel said, is, you know, unlike what you just mentioned, in Malaysia itself, we're trying to just tell everybody that creatives are essential, right? So I would encourage the young creative professional to remind that you can use your imagination, your passion, and bring ideas to inspire, and that's something that creatives can do, because we're not just problem solvers, but we're also storytellers, we're visionaries, and we definitely have the potential to impact. Is it through language, through design, through building? I want to my advice is, you have the power to impact in a bigger way just by using design thinking. Don't treat creatives as the end product, right? But actually encourage them to be part of the dialogue when you are pitching to a client, when you're sitting down for strategy purposes. Encourage a creative to share their thoughts on how they can problem solve. So that's my advice.
That's great advice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charmaine. Because this is just coming in
She's
my
right
mind. Yeah, and also there's a profoundly inspirational from Rachel as well. Okay, thank you, ladies. Let's gradually close this for this evening. Thought for this evening. The modern economy has been based on a linear design where the keywords are take, make, use, and dispose. This approach has led to constant economic growth that neglects the real limits of our planet. The negative effects have been evidenced with consequences for both the environmental and the social spheres over the last decades. Growing attention has been paid to the new model of a circular economy in response to the global situation. The circular economy is not only a simple business model, but rather the integration of many strategies for the protection of the natural ecosystem and the maintenance of the economic stability worldwide, according to the three panelists earlier on. A holistic approach is vital for the success of this new economy, where technological advancement, including creativity and innovation, must be combined with the assessment of the possible repercussion on the sustainability spheres. This is including environmental, social, and economic. Many tools can support economic transaction, such as the life cycle assessment and the creative entrepreneurship, able to push the strategic choices towards the impact reduction in the most disparate fields. There is much to do. For this, joint forces are needed. Great, thank you very much. So, first of all, I'd like to thank all the esteemed panels, include indeed the wonderful audience who had clearly tuned in and posted that specific question earlier on. I think I'm going to summarize the conversation. So, despite the discussion on creativity and innovation central to circular economy, further research is needed to tackle such as issue like from the forerunners in implementing legislation in favor of the circular economy at the beginning of the 2000s to the most recent policies and packages developed at the level of countries or regions. We can state that the circular economy has gradually established We could state that the circular economy is everywhere in the policy agendas and strategic plans of companies, but can hardly be found in the reality of practices. Addresses whether and how the various forms of creativity and innovation, technological, but also organizational and social innovation in terms of entrepreneurship, could offer solution to lever the obstacles and facilitate the necessary challenges in our modes of production and consumption. With that, thank you so much to architect Dr. Serena Hijaz, Principal Director of Hijaz Kasturi Associate and Deputy President of Green Building Council Malaysia. Thank you. And thank you so much to Charmaine Wong, CEO and co-founder of Cow Creative.
Thanks so much, guys. Bye.
And definitely our wonderful Dr. Rachel Granger, Professor of Urban Economics, Leicester's Castle Business School, De Montfort University, United Kingdom. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much to everybody that has taken part today. I have to start saying a huge heartfelt thank you. It was really excellent of all the panelists, a few people in the background, the student services team who have done an excellent job. So thank you so much. And this is for everyone. And so thank you and grateful for you to make time for this. And for you, know everyone to just forth and do this work. So thank you all. Take care of yourselves. Take time when you are exhausted, when things happen that you didn't expect. So thank you all. ISUC Plaza series organized by Integrated Sustainability and Urban Creativity Center, ISUC from Asia Pacific University of Technology and Innovation, APU, Malaysia. Till